Welcome back again to a little bit more Android programming. So the topic for today is dialogues. So for dialogues, Google did a really nice job of putting together a, a description of how dialogues work. Most of the information in this video is going to come directly from Google's information about creating dialogues. There's a lot of great information in here. Really what I've done is I've just kind of put together an app to kind of show you some of these ideas and talk about some of the different things you can do with dialogues. Certainly recommend you just go check out Google's information directly. Where we're at in the class, if you want to go to the course website, we're kind of in the last topic of things that are going to be in the exam 2 for the people that are in this course. So menus, preferences, and then finally dialogues. Dialogs presents a really useful skill that you'll need in a lot of different apps. So we thought it'd be good just to sit down and show you dialogs. You can go to the course website if you'd like to follow along with the slides. There's also going to be some code to help you get started that'll be located there. The app that we're going to be making today is called Hello Dialogs. There's going to be 5 different buttons. Each button that you click on is going to launch a different dialogue. So the About dialog will be the simplest one that we make. Then we'll launch another one that's for whether you want to make a toast message or an exit. One that shows you a list view, a progress dialog, and then a custom subclass. Google's definition of a dialog is just something that pops up that steals the focus away from the activity that you'll need to respond to. I think most people know what a dialog is. To start the project today, what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you start by downloading the zip file. You can go and click on this link or the link from the course website. It should go to the same place. What this is going to do is this is going to download a zip. If you extract this zip, you can extract this zip wherever you would like, with the one exception that if you put it in your Eclipse projects, it will get mad at you. So it works out a little better to put it somewhere that's not in your standard Eclipse project folder. If you would really like, you can import it later using Eclipse. What I'm going to do is I just picked another folder and I just stuck it there for now. You can see that the information that's here, there's a .java file, some resources, and a manifest. This is the same stuff that like the sample code gives you. So what we're going to do is we are going to do a new Android project, create project from existing source. You can call the project Hello Dialogs. I'm going to call mine Hello Dialogs Video. And then you can browse to wherever you downloaded that folder. And you can see that once you've browsed to that folder, it's already auto-filled in all the properties below. You do still have the choice of what SDK you'd like to use. If you have 1.5 handy, I would recommend using that. It was made for 1.5. If you only have newer stuff available, that's fine. You will get a warning that says that the target SDK does not match the min version. That warning is fine. If that warning really bothers you, I'll show you how to get rid of it. Just open up the manifest, and you can see that here I selected 2.3. If I wanted to get rid of that warning, I could bump it up to the matching min version. Shouldn't be a problem if you just leave it at 3, because that should be fine. So to go ahead and take a look at what you've been given, the best thing to do is probably just go ahead and run it. So once your emulator loads, you can see that there are 5 buttons. At present, clicking on the buttons does nothing. What we're going to be doing is we're just going to be making one button at a time, kind of going through here. If you look to see what you've been given in the code, what you've got is you've got a couple constants that we're going to show you what those are all about here in a second. And and then you've got an anonymous inner class for each button, and then that's it, right? So we've done the work of making the XML file for you. We've also created a couple string resources for you if you'd like to use any of the string resources as you're creating this app. But all the dialogue work is blank, so we're just going to go through making some dialogues. Great. So hopefully you got that up and running. Do recommend that you follow along and actually do these things. It's the best way to learn. So we've made this. If you had a problem with the SDK, you could fix that. Someone in the class got a bunch of empty packages. You could delete those if you had that problem. And hopefully you can run it and it looks like this. You can see that there are a few differences with how the look and feel goes depending on what device you're on. This one has square corners, whereas my images were made for 1.5. The dialog classes that we're going to be using are going to fall into a couple categories. The one that we're going to use the most is what's called an alert dialog. An alert dialog has 0, 1, 2, or 3 buttons. This one has 3. And or a list of selectable items, such as that can become radio buttons or checkboxes. The alert dialog is the one that you're going to use the most, so it's the one we're going to spend the most time on. Then there are at least 3 native dialog classes, subclasses. Native just means it's something Google made, so it's built into the package. There's a progress dialog for like indicating progress. A date picker and a time picker. Google has a really nice tutorial for the date picker and time picker, so we'll push those off to the lab. But we will spend a little bit of time with the progress dialog just to show that to you. And then kind of one of the most important is whenever you want to do something specific, how can you create your own XML resource to use for a dialog? That can be really useful. So, the big picture. The big picture is when you want to show a dialogue, there are a few ways you can do it. We're going to show you what's the recommended approach. And the recommended approach is to have the activity use the function show dialogue. So if within an activity you say show dialogue and you pass in a number, it'll show that dialogue. And that's what these numbers are at the top. There are 5 numbers for each dialogue. Whenever the activity calls that, it will automatically call create dialog on create dialog. This should feel really familiar to you. This is, the same way that the menu worked. The way the menu worked is when you click the menu button, it called on create options menu. Here, when you call show dialog, it calls on create dialog. The on create is called the first time, or any time where that dialog doesn't exist yet. But if you need to do something every single time, there's an on prepare dialog that is called every single time. We're going to show you an example of using both. And we're just going to go through one dialog at the time. First we'll do dialog about, then exit, and then one with a list, a progress, and a custom. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we call show dialog at the appropriate time. So the way that you do this is you just find the appropriate button listener. So the first one that is just showing a simple OK button, it wants to show the dialog. You can do an autocomplete here. Dialog ID about. Showing a dialog is a pretty simple task. You just call show dialog, and then the other functions will take care of the rest. Let's just go ahead, since it's easy, let's just go ahead and fill this in for all the different ones. They're actually in alphabetical order, so there's an about, and then there's an exit. And then after that, after exit, there is a learning survey. Worked out nicely to put them in alphabetical order. And then loading. And then finally, Rose-Hulman. So now, whenever we click a button, it'll call Show Dialog, and it'll pass in an ID. It really just passes in 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But with the name, it makes it much easier to read what's happening. So that's showing the dialogue. The next thing is creating the dialogue. So to create a dialogue, we're going to need to override the method onCreateDialog. I'll just close these and open them back up to give me some more space. So if you just start typing onCreate, hit Control Space, find onCreateDialog, it should stub in a little information for you. OnCreateDialog returns a dialog. So the way that I typically see this set up is you say dialog, so you create a dialog at the top. In the middle you create the appropriate dialog, and then at the bottom you return that dialog. Cool. So the way you figure out which dialog you should create is you do a switch based on that ID that got passed in. And so we'll just make a case statement for each different dialog. So whether it's about or exit, I'll just let you type in each of these guys. Oops, I have a semicolon there instead of a colon. It's a little busy work, but it's not too bad. And so one by one we're going to learn about these. Each time it's going to get a little bit more complex than the one before it. So the one that we're going to start with is the About box. The About box is very simple. It just has a message and a button OK if you'd like to dismiss. The way that you create alert dialogues is a little bit different if you're not used to this style. Is it kind of uses a factory to generate the object for you. So there's a specific style for this type of coding approach. The way Google does it is they have you create a builder object, specifically an alert dialog builder object. You set the properties on the builder, and then after you're done setting the properties, you call create, and that produces the actual alert dialog instance for you. Pretty simple concept. As you create the builder, you're going to set properties like the title, the message, the positive buttons, things like that. There are a few more, and then you're going to create it. So let's just go ahead and do one together. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create our alert dialog builder. I'll just call it, I don't know, About Builder. The alert dialog builder constructor takes a context. So many things take a context. An activity is a subclass, so you just pass in this. And then what you can do is you can call the different set methods. You can look up in help to see all the different set methods, or you can just type .set and you can see a lot of them. Let's go ahead and start with a couple of the basic ones. Let's say we wanted to set the message. There are a bunch of strings that you can use. One of them that I've got set up for you is called About Description. That will be a message that'll look reasonable. You can also set other properties. One of the things you can set, which is kind of neat, is you can set whether the back button works or not, so whether it's cancelable or not. There are little ways around it. I think the search button still exits, but don't worry about that. And then you can create the buttons. There are 3 buttons that you can make. There's a positive button, a negative button, and then there's also a neutral button. Really, the name of the button could have just as easily been like left, middle, and right. But Google wanted to try to encourage you to use the button for a certain purpose. So they could have been 1, 2, 3, but they're trying to encourage a certain purpose for them. So we'll make a positive button here, and we'll give it the string resource for OK. And then the other thing that's in here is an on-click listener. For now, we're just going to set it to null, and we'll show what null does here in a second. But it'll just dismiss it by default. Then the most important step is to create a dialog from the builder. So hey, builder, create a dialog for us, and we'll set that equal to dialog, and then dialog's what will get returned. Cool. So a pretty simple little implementation of onCreate dialog. And now if we click on About Dialogs, we should get a little message that says, this app shows the different types of dialogs available. When we click the button, it goes ahead and clears the dialog. That was some built-in functionality that I didn't realize at first, to be honest. Students kind of pointed out, hey, it goes away on its own. The other thing you could have done is you could have, instead of just setting the on-click listener to null, you could have made a dialog interface listener. And we'll need this later, so we may as well learn the skill now. The button here has an on-click listener, just like any other listener. The difference is, instead of being a view on-click listener, it's a dialog interface listener. The only difference is that the method gets passed in a dialog instead of a view. So there is a slight difference there. Two classes with the same name tripped up some students earlier in the course whenever they inadvertently imported this one when they wanted the view one, but hopefully that problem didn't happen to you. Inside here you could do whatever you'd like. I mean, just for example, if you wanted to make a toast message, you could do something like that. I think it's just make toast, and then it requires a context. So I'll just pass in this. I had to say hello dialogs.this since I'm in a anonymous inner class, and then a string. So it says goodbye, and then it also needs a duration. I'll just have it be a length short, and then you can show it. And then you could also say, apparently it's not make toast, it's make text, I believe. That was the problem. And then you could also explicitly dismiss the dialog, but it will get dismissed for you anyway. So listeners can be good things on buttons. So we added a quick little listener. So whenever we hit OK, it shows that toast, and it says and dismisses as well. There are a lot of things that you could set with the builder. I'll go ahead and catch the slides up here. You could set cancelable to true or false. It's kind of neat to see it set to false. So it's set to false if you want to force someone into making a button selection. You can make it to where they can't hit the back button. There might be critical times where you want to force them to do something. So if you hit back, it just won't go away. There are other things you can do. You can set a title in addition to the message, and that's just set title. I mean, there's all sorts of options and things that you have. I think I've got one in here called About Dialogs. Once you've got a title, it'll show an icon to the left of it. You can change that icon to something different if you'd like. So I recommend that you just kind of play around. So this shows just the title. If I want to show a icon, just play around, add a few things. Make sure you're comfortable with what the builder can do. So I'll just go ahead and add the Android icon. In the slides, I think I also added, there's another image in here called the Rose logo. You can add that one as well. It's rather ridiculously large. It looks nice and sharp. Cool. So those are some of the different simple things that you can do with Dialogs. Next, what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to try one on your own. So in the last example, we had just a positive button. In the example I'm going to give you, you're going to have to set not only positive, but also neutral and negative. And what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to make this alert dialog. So when you click on the exit button, have it show a message that says, would you like to receive a toast? Would you like to cancel? Or would you like to exit? And when I say exit, I mean like actually exit the app, like call finish. So you might have to play around for a little bit, but it's a great example for you to try a little bit on your own. So take a little bit of time and see if you can make this. Just pause the video. So hopefully you paused the video and made it on your own. I'm going to assume that you did, but I'm going to go ahead and make it as well, just in case you had trouble. So to make this guy, what I'm going to do, I'll cheat. It's similar in a lot of ways to the one above. You just need to change about dialog builder to, I don't know, exit dialog or exit builder. So I'll just kind of say, change a couple of these. Cool, that should be enough. And then I'm just going to change these. This one only really needs a message. Let's see here. I think I had a string in here. So an exit or toast string. Doesn't actually need a title or an icon. Cancelable, you could set if you like. It defaults to true. But we had you set positive button, and that one should say toast. And we can make it say, thank you for not exiting. You could have it say anything you like. In addition to a positive button, we also wanted a neutral button and a negative button. So we'll go ahead and make them in order. We'll make neutral. And this one should say cancel. And for cancel, the only thing we want to do is we just want to make the box go away. There is a slight difference between dismiss and cancel. Cancel also gets called if somebody hits the back button, and in our code it's not any different, but there is a function that you can call that gets called if something's canceled, so there is a difference, but not really in our code. And then if somebody wants to leave the app, we'll call that the negative button, and we'll make that the string for exit. And we'll give them a new dialog interface on click listener as well. And inside here we are just going to say finish. And that should exit the app. Cool. Oops, missing semicolon. If we run this, should have a little example of a positive button displaying a toast, a neutral button which just kind of does nothing, and then a negative button, exit, which should actually exit the app. Seemed to work just great. So hopefully you had success in making your own implementation. This is the way that I chose to do it, and it's a good practice of an alert dialog. Alert dialogues can do more than just buttons. The other things that alert dialogues do very well is displaying a list of items. This list of items can also be clicked on, and you can set it up to where they are just like clickable buttons, or they're a single item like a radio button, or a multiple item check, which is a checkbox. So we're going to do this with Learning Survey. And in order to present that list, you're going to need to either say set items, or set multiple choice items, or set single choice items. You can see that they're slightly different. For multiple choice, you need to pass in a Boolean array for whether it's initially checked or not. For single choice, you need to say who's checked. The other thing that's sneaky is that the multi-choice one actually has a slightly different listener. So we'll get to that once we get there. The first thing that we want to do is that we want to make an array. You can see that you can pass in a string array. You can also pass in a string resource. So let's go ahead and make a string resource. The string resource we're going to make is shown here. So you could copy paste this code, but I'll go ahead and get some practice of making string resources with you. To make a string resource, you could stick it inside strings.xml, or you also see people create a new folder, or sorry, a new file called arrays.xml. It's just a matter of how organized you'd like to be. And what this is this is a string array. I'm going to call mine learning methods array. You can call yours anything you like, just make sure you remember the name. And into it I'm going to add a few items. I've actually got string resources for the different items that are going to go in here. So you can you can make up your own, or you can use the ones that I've got. So I'm just going to say at string slash, looks like I've got reading slash web, reading underscore web. I've also got one for lecture demos. Kind of nice to put them split screen so that I can make sure I type it all right. And labs. It can actually be easier whenever you're mass producing something to, instead of using the GUI editor, just to type it in code directly. Then I'll add exams. Mainly I mean preparing for exams. And other. Cool. So at that point we've got an array. We're ready to use our array for our items in the list. And so we've got everything set we need, hopefully. Let's go ahead and double check. Oh yeah, so we're ready to start making this. Cool. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make an alert dialog builder. So we'll call this one, I don't know, you can call it whatever you like. Let's say learning builder. So let's go ahead and start with the most important of tasks. Well, let's stick the title in first. All right, set title. I should have a string for you for the title. I think it's called like learning methods. And then we'll start with the most important one, the set items. Cool, and we'll use our resource, r.array.learningmethods array. This one also receives an on-click listener. It is actually the exact same listener, so it's, oops, that's not what I want to do. And to say dialog interface on-click listener. Cool. And so inside here, you can determine which item got clicked. There's a couple things you could do inside here. One thing you could do is you could, let's say you wanted to print a toast message for what got selected. So the first thing we need is we need to get the array. A couple ways you could do it. I'll just do it this way. So I'll just get the resources, and then I'll just get it as a string array. Might be a slightly more elegant way to do it, but this will get the job done. Usually I would just use get array directly, but since I'm in an inner class, wasn't sure if that would work. Oops, get string array is what I meant to say. And then you've got which one got clicked. So you've got that piece of information. So we'll just go ahead and make a text toast here. So I'll just do the same thing I did before. This. And say, yay for whatever got clicked. So items, which. And then you've got to pick a length. We'll just do a short toast. Cool. And then the most important task is to create a dialog from the builder. So of course I did that a little quick. So hopefully you can pause the video if you'd like, type this in and give it a whirl. See if I type the same thing in the slides. Oh, I set cancelable to be true, so it could be canceled, but you don't really have to have that. And I noticed in the slides that I said show the toast. That's an important one. So let's go ahead and give this a whirl. So now what we should get is we should be able to click on the learning methods, and it should use the list to show us a bunch of options. So which learning methods help you learn? Do you prefer reading and learning off the web, which is a great way to learn? The lecture demos, which is what we're doing now. Hopefully you would say labs. Labs are really the best way to learn. So yay for labs. If you click something different, you know, projects, whatever helps you learn the best, that's great. So that is the summary of using a list. So that's number one. Other things you can do is you can give it a cool little radio button look. The only thing we'll have to change is we'll have to change for radio buttons. We want to say set single choice items. So let's go give that a go. So it's of course very similar to this one. So I'm just going to copy it. And I'll comment out the old one. And now the main things that changed here is instead of saying set items, you're going to have to say set single choice items. So just add the words single choice. One other thing changes. You can see with single choice you have to say who's checked by default. And that's the second parameter that you pass in. So let's say we wanted to by default select item 2. It's 0 based, so it'd really kind of be the third one down. And let's go ahead and run this again. There's also going to be something very different happen with the dismissing, different from what we did before. Let's just play it and watch. So you can see that if you click on learning methods, you immediately get the radio buttons. And if you click on a radio button, the big thing that's different about this is whether it automatically dismisses or not. And you can see that it chooses not to automatically dismiss. So if you don't explicitly dismiss, it'll just stay up. And you know, you'd have to hit the back button to get it to go away. If you did want it to dismiss, that's easy. You just say dialog.dismiss. And then now if you run it, when you click something, it's going to dismiss. So if I click this one, it dismisses. Another neat thing is if we click the button again, it's actually the same dialog presented to us again, and you can see it remembers which one you clicked. So that memory is automatic. You didn't have to do anything like with the menu to set it. So that's kind of neat. They do a little bit more for you. I'm going to set it to labs and then leave it there. So that's single choice. Let's go ahead and do multi-choice. There are a couple more things that change with this one. So instead of single, you say multi. And instead of saying who's checked, you have to give it an array of booleans for who's checked. And also the listener is different. So it's a multi-choice listener. So a few things have changed. Let's go try to give this a whirl. I'll start by copying and pasting what I had before. But there's going to be quite a bit changed this time. Comment out the old one. So it's going to be a multi-choice. And instead of saying who's selected, you have to pass it in a Boolean array. We'll just kind of make one real quick here. So let's say false for the first one, true, true, false, true. You can pick whatever you like. I tried to pick something there for what helped me learn. The other thing that needs to change is no longer is it an on-click listener. It actually has a different listener called on multi-choice click listener. So that's something that is different here as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and blow away what I had before and just say on multi-choice. I'm going to start typing it and hit Control Space. And it went ahead and made it for me. You can see that the thing that's different is it passes in the dialog. It passes in which item in the list got hit. And then the way it's different is it actually tells you whether it's currently checked now or not. What we're going to do in here is we're just going to use that same approach we did before. So I'll go ahead and start by copying what we did before. But now we're going to look to see if it's checked or not for whether we say yay or boo. So if is checked. Then we'll say that toast. If it's not checked, we'll say too bad. So if you didn't like it, it'll do that. The other thing that you can decide for yourself is whether it should dismiss it or not. Personally, I think what probably looks the best is to not dismiss it. But if you don't dismiss it, it might be nice to at least set a button so that you can get it to go away without hitting back. I think in the slides I did it differently, but we'll just add a quick little button here. And the nice thing about buttons is even if the callback doesn't do anything, it'll still dismiss, which is pretty slick. So if we run this, we should hopefully get a bunch of checkboxes. And you can see that I currently learn by the demo lectures, the labs, and the exams. If I were to click exams, it'd say yay for exams. Uncheck it, it'd say too bad for exams. Too bad for reading/web. Cool. The other button takes up a little bit of space, but it is scrollable. So even if you had a lot of things, you get scrolling for free. And then once you're done, you can hit OK, and it'll go away. So covered a lot of ground there, but hopefully you've got a good idea for how you can use list box with just like buttons, with a radio selection, or with checkboxes. And you can always add buttons if you'd like. So with the checkboxes one, I decided that it'd be better with a button. Cool, so I guess it's time to move on. So here's a summary of what these things are, how each one is different. So I said try adding a done button. instead of dismissing for each click. The changes you had to make. Next up, so the next thing we're going to talk about is a progress dialog. There are two types of progress dialog, one that spins and one that's a horizontal indicator. Let's start with the one that spins. The other thing I mentioned is the look and feel of these changes depending on what SDK you're using and what device you're using. But your code doesn't, which is kind of neat. It just kind of changes behind the scenes on you. So a progress dialog is a little bit different. There are a lot of ways you can make a progress dialog, but it does not require a builder. So let's go ahead and play with it without a builder. It is a subclass of an alert dialog, so you could make part of it with a builder if you wanted, but you don't have to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a progress dialog, and then I'm just going to set properties on it. If you say set, you can see it's got a lot of information that you can set. The most important one is probably this one right here, set progress style. There are two progress styles. If you say project dialog dot, there's a style horizontal and a style spinner. Let's start with style spinner. And then the only other thing we have to do is we have to say dialog equals progress dialog. You of course could have done this without making the intermediate step, but then you would have had to do a lot of casting so that you could call set progress style and things like this. I thought it'd be easier just to make it, and then once we were done, call set progress style. So we already have done the show dialog step before. And then, there's a couple other things that will make it look better. If we add a message, that'll make it look better. So let's go ahead and add a message. So set message. And I think I've got a string in there for loading. Oh, that's interesting. Set message is not happy. I would have expected that set message could receive either a string version or a resource, but I guess it is only set up to receive a string resource, or sorry, a character array. So yeah, so you can see with set message, there's only one of them. There is not one to receive a resource. Kind of surprising, but no big deal. So we'll just say get string, and then we'll load it up that way. Cool. So if we run this, when we click on our loading, it should make a little spinner for us. Obviously, as I said, I like the 2.3 spinner. As I mentioned in the slides, there's really no point for this app to have a spinner, right? You would need something that takes a little while to load before you need a spinner. But if you're fetching resources from the web or something like that, it can be really useful to be able to show a loading dialog. It is possible to put buttons on it, so you could have like cancel and things like that, because it is a subclass of alert dialog. But most of the time, you'll want to cancel it from code. The other type of style that you can set up is, instead of a spinner, you can set up a horizontal style. One of the things that you can do in the horizontal style is you can you can increment the progress. So you've seen bars that fill up. By default, it goes from 0 to 100. So if I say 55, that'll be just a little over halfway full. And if we click on the button to see what this style looks like, you can see it's just a loading bar. Again, this would make a lot of sense if you're receiving information, you know how much you're done. It's a really good way to show that transfer. to really show loading effectively, there's a great demo that Google's got. If you've got time, definitely work through this thing. It shows a really nice example of working with threads, working with the handler that goes with it. So it's this one right here, example of a progress dialog with a second thread. I didn't want to go through it today because I like to try to keep the lectures fairly focused, and if I had gone on a tangent to talk about threads and handlers, I mean, we'd never get you back, right? But there is a great demo in there if you've got some time to work it. What we will do, though, is this is a good time to show, like, if you click the button again, we can make it be different. So let's go ahead and do an example with that. So the first time you click or you show a dialog, it calls onCreate, but it's only called the one time. However, there's another function called onPrepareDialog, which is called every time the dialog is shown. It works a lot like onCreate. You get an ID, so you can do a switch based on the ID. So if the case is dialog loading, we could do some stuff. And what we want to do is we want to take our dialog, we want to typecast it to be a progress dialog. I'll just go ahead and make another variable here. So progress dialog. And then once it's a progress dialog, we can safely call functions on it, such as increment, progress by, let's just say we incremented the progress by 1. So what we're doing here is we're showing you the onPrepareDialog function. We're also showing you the ability to increment a dialog horizontal indicator. So if we run this, it should call this every time, including the first time. So it should start at 56. So if I click on it, it should start at 56. I say back, I click again, 57, 58, 59, 60. I think if you had the patience to go over 100, I think it just stays capped at 100. So it'll just show 100 out of 100. I'm not going to click all the way to get there. But you can see an example of both of these functions pretty easily here. Cool. So that's all we're going to cover with progress dialogs. Like I say, there's also 2 more native dialogs. There's a date picker and a time picker, but we'll cover those in the lab. So the dialogs lab will cover those. So we are down to only one dialog left, and that is a custom dialog subclass. Let me catch the slides up a little here. So there's the onPrepareDialog function. You can see that in the version here, I just chose to do it all in one line. I just did the typecast right in line. This is what I would typically recommend. Shorter is better. The last thing we're going to do today is we're going to make a custom layout dialog. There are 2 ways you could go about this. One is you could just provide an XML, and you could go ahead and keep all the code in the same file. The other way you could do it is you could actually create a new class, which is a subclass of dialog. It just depends on how complex the dialog is, which you'd rather do. This one's pretty simple, so we're going to show you the option to where you just create an XML, but you don't actually subclass dialog. You just set the content view for the base class dialog. So the first thing that we're going to need is we're going to need an XML. So here's showing the dialog. So let's create a new file called custom _ dialog.xml. And in this XML, we're going to put a text view, an image view, and then a done button. So I called mine here done _ button. You'll notice that in here it does not say Rose-Hulman at the top. The title is separate. So you're just setting the XML for the content view. Cool, so let's go ahead and go into Eclipse. Under Layout, we'll say New. I'll do the command, or that's Option Command N to bring this up. New XML Android file. And I'm going to make a custom dialog.xml. Type layout, the root element, linear layout is going to work perfect. So the best way to get practice is just to go ahead and make the XML on your own, and just kind of see what it looks like. What it should look like is this guy here. So what I'd recommend is just pause the video and give it a go on your own. And hopefully you've paused it and you've had some success on your own. As always, I'm going to do it with you. So the first thing that I like to do is I like to bring up the outline whenever I'm doing layout stuff, as well as the properties. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start by adding the objects that I want. So I'm going to want a text view, and then I'm going to want an image view, and then I'm going to want a button. First thing you can see is that it's got them in horizontal layout. That's no good. I would rather the orientation be vertical for this. And then for the text view, I'm going to say, I don't care about your ID, but I do want your text to say Fighting Engineers, which is the Rose mascot. More than a few people have made fun of that. The image doesn't need an ID, but it does need a resource. The resource is the Rosie logo. So this is our mascot at Rose-Hulman. For the button, it will need an ID, so I'm going to say Done button. And you know, there's plenty of things you could set on these things, right? So the text obviously is done. I mean, I think that the buttons look better if you fill the parent sometimes, but then leave a margin around it, right? So it's totally up to you what you think this thing would look like. I think the image view would look better if it was centered. And then the text view would look better if it was larger. And so the text size, let's make it, I don't know, 24 SP. And then there's two ways to center a text. You can either say gravity center or layout gravity center. It just depends on whether you want to wrap around it or not. And then it might look good with a little bottom margin as well. To get a better idea of how it would look, you can say theme dialog, and it'll kind of make it look like it's going to look in the actual dialog. One thing that mine chose to do is it did choose to make it like tighter, which was kind of annoying. I didn't really want that. So somewhere I found that it was a little better if instead of like saying just wrap content, it actually worked a little better if I just gave one of them a fixed size. So either you can make the outside layout a fixed size, or you could make one of the objects in here a fixed size. Either would work. Fixed size is of course not a great solution, but good enough for a demo about dialogues. Cool, so at this point we've got an XML file, which is great. I'll go ahead and close down my other little helper windows. And we're ready to go ahead and start making it. So this one is just a plain old dialog. So I'll say custom dialog. Obviously here I could just use the dialog directly, but I kind of like doing this, of making it separate and then assigning it to it. And what we need to do here is we want to say custom dialog set content view. And we're going to set the content view to that layout that we just made. And then also in here, we're going to add a listener to the button. Let's run it and make sure that things are working first. Oh, I forgot to set a title. I was going to set a title as well. I was going to set the title to just say Rose-Hulman. And I'll run this. When I click on it, we'll see if it pops up. Looks good. So if I click on the Done button now, nothing happens. But that's why I was going to add that listener. So let's go add that listener. So adding a listener here, it really behaves just like a button that's in a normal activity. So let's say we want to capture the button, and then we'll set a listener for it. There's only one difference. That difference is that if you say find view by ID done button, I think that it will not find it unless you look for it within the dialog, right? So you need to look for it inside the custom dialog. Oops, I've got button misspelled there. So look inside the dialog for the done button. And then from here it works just like you've set listeners many times on button, right? So you're going to set the on-click listener. And this one is just a view on-click listener. And what we want to do if you click done is we would like to dismiss this dialog. So we want to refer to the custom dialog, but we're within an anonymous inner class, so it's going to have to be final. I'll go change that here in a second. So it's going to want us to make that variable final, which is fine because it wasn't going to change. And then whenever somebody clicks the done button, just dismiss it. So this part works exactly like activities, exactly like what you're used to. So when we run this and we click on this custom dialog, we see the custom dialog looks how we like it. And then if you click on done, it actually dismisses it. So that's the app. So you've got a progress. You've got a really simple dialog. You've got the 3-button one that can do a positive and negative and neutral. You've got items, which are pretty cool. And those are the focus. Let me go ahead and wrap up with the slides. So here's the XML if you wanted to see how I set it up. Setting the content view was the important step there. Searching for it within the custom dialog. And really they behave a lot like activities, these custom dialogs. So if you want a really lightweight activity, it's a great way to do it because there's a lot less overhead. There's no starting, there's no registering in the manifest. You just throw up this dialog, and you can do a lot with dialogs. Also, it feels like you're still in the same application as opposed to losing the whole screen. So for little things, it's really the way to go. So these are the 3 alerts, and then the native, and then the make your own dialog that we want to go through. Handy little skill. Hopefully you can find a lot of great things to do with it. If you ever want to, there's that great Google site for learning more about it. What we're going to have you do with it, just to kind of give you a heads up, is you're going to be using Dialogs in Lab 6. So there's a, oops, need to make the link live for this. So I brought it up. So there's a couple examples using the date picker and time picker. Those should be pretty straightforward for you. The other one is kind of neat. This is an app that I came up with. So it's a Blackjack Trainer is what it is. The idea is that for every situation in blackjack, there's a certain action you should take, like whether you should hit, stand, or double down. And so what this app is it's going to use dialogues to help train people how to play blackjack. So it's kind of fun. There are 3 buttons at the bottom. Each of these buttons shows a certain dialogue. Cheat shows a little matrix that tells you what you should do. Make your move shows the set items and an alert dialogue. And then when you click one, it either says correct or incorrect. Again, that's with an alert dialogue. Skip shows you a little "Are you sure?" button. These are probably the most common dialogues you'll see on any platform, the "Are you sure's" or things like that. And then also from the menu, there's just an about box. So there's these 5 different dialogues that you're going to make in this app. The majority of the graphics are done for you. So like the cards will all show up. That part is done. It's meant to be a lab about dialogues. So we let you focus on this. As a funny little side note, this is actually the first app that I got up on the market. I made some additions to it and I put it up. It's called Blackjack Tutor, so you can find it on the store. It's kind of neat how easy it is to get things up onto the market. So I definitely have to applaud Google there for making it really easy to stick things up. You can see it's not a huge seller. There have been 57 downloads. I mean, that's $50. So that's kind of neat that you can put things up on the store and make real money. All right, I've digressed more than enough. That's our summary of dialogues. Look forward to seeing you next time. Take it easy.